At my mother's 60th birthday dinner, my aunt stood up with a champagne glass and announced she was finally selling the lake house. I froze mid-bite. The lake house was mine. My grandmother had left it to me when she died 3 years ago. Before I could say anything, my aunt's husband added cheerfully that they'd gotten a great offer, almost $400,000. The table erupted in congratulations while I sat there, forks suspended in the air, feeling like I'd just been punched in the stomach. Then my mother looked at me across the table with an expression I couldn't quite read, and everything started to unravel. I'm Rachel, 28 years old, third-year medical resident, currently surviving on 4 hours of sleep and hospital cafeteria coffee. The lake house my aunt was so casually announcing the sale of wasn't just any property. It was the place where I'd spent every summer of my childhood, where my grandmother taught me to fish off the dock, where I'd scattered her ashes into the water 3 years ago according to her wishes. It was supposed to be mine. She'd told me so a dozen times, promised me that when she was gone, I'd always have that place to come back to. But here's the thing about being a medical resident. You don't have time for anything. 80-hour work weeks, overnight calls, constantly exhausted. When Grandma died, I was in the middle of my surgical rotation. I flew home for the funeral, stayed 2 days, and flew back. My mom said she'd handle the estate stuff. My Aunt Linda, Mom's older sister, volunteered to help since she lived closer to the lake house. I was grateful. I trusted them. That was my first mistake. The birthday party was at Rosewood, this upscale Italian place my mom had been wanting to try. About 20 people packed around a long table, the whole extended family. My mom at the head, beaming in her new dress. My dad next to her, looking slightly uncomfortable in his tie. My Aunt Linda and her husband Frank sitting directly across from me, both dressed like they'd just closed a business deal. My younger brother Jason was there with his new girlfriend. A handful of cousins I barely kept in touch with. Everyone was laughing, drinking wine, celebrating. I hadn't been sleeping well for weeks. The residency program was brutal, and I'd just finished a particularly rough rotation in the ER. I'd almost skipped the party entirely. But my mom had been so excited about turning 60, making it this big milestone. I couldn't miss it. So I showed up in the only clean dress I owned, my hair barely brushed, dark circles under my eyes that no amount of concealer could hide. The first hour was normal. Appetizers, small talk, people asking me how the hospital was going. I gave my standard answers. Fine. Busy. Learning a lot. Tired. My aunt kept refilling everyone's wine glasses, playing the perfect hostess even though this wasn't her party. My Uncle Frank was loud as always, telling stories about his car dealership, name-dropping customers, laughing at his own jokes. Then the entrees arrived. Everyone was halfway through their pasta when my aunt suddenly stood up, tapping her glass with a fork. The table went quiet. "I have an announcement," she said, smiling around at everyone. "Frank and I have some exciting news to share." My mom looked surprised but pleased. "Oh? We finally decided to sell the lake house," Aunt Linda continued, her voice bright and cheerful. "We've been managing it for the past 3 years since Mom passed, and honestly, it's just been too much work. But we found a buyer who's offering $395,000, which is incredible for that market." The table burst into excited chatter. People were congratulating them, asking about the buyer, talking about what a good investment the house had been. I just sat there. My fork clattered onto my plate. My aunt was still talking. "We're really grateful Mom left us something so valuable. It's going to help Frank finally retire from the dealership, and we're thinking of buying a condo in Florida." "Wait," I said. My voice came out quieter than I intended. "What did you say?" The conversation paused. Everyone looked at me. "The lake house," I repeated, louder now. "You said Grandma left it to you?" Aunt Linda's smile didn't waver. "Well, yes. It's been in the estate for 3 years now, and we've been handling everything." "No," I interrupted. I could feel my hands starting to shake. "Grandma left the lake house to me." The silence that fell over the table was different now, heavier. My Uncle Frank laughed, this nervous little bark. "Rachel, honey, I think you're confused. Your mom and Linda handled all the estate paperwork. The lake house was part of the overall estate distribution." "I'm not confused," I said. I looked at my mother. "Mom, you know this. Grandma told me 100 times. The lake house was supposed to be mine." My mom set down her wine glass carefully. Her face had gone pale. Rachel, sweetheart, maybe we should talk about this later. What is there to talk about later? The exhaustion I'd been fighting for weeks was suddenly burning into something sharper. Grandma promised me that house. She told me every summer. She said when she was gone, it would be mine, so I'd always have a place to go back to. Aunt Linda sat back down, her expression shifting from cheerful to concerned. Oh, honey. I know Mom used to say a lot of things, but verbal promises aren't legally binding. The actual will was very clear. She left the property to be managed by the family. And your mother and I, as co-executors. I never saw the will, I said. Another pause. My dad cleared his throat uncomfortably. You were so busy with medical school and your residency, my mom said softly. We didn't want to burden you with all the legal details. We handled it. Without showing me the will, it wasn't a question. There were a lot of documents. Uncle Frank jumped in. Estate stuff is complicated. We didn't think you needed to worry about. Where's the money been going? I asked suddenly. The pieces were starting to click together in my exhausted, angry brain. You said you've been managing the house for 3 years. That's a waterfront property. Have you been renting it out? The look my aunt and uncle exchanged lasted less than a second, but I caught it. We've had to cover maintenance costs, Aunt Linda said carefully. The property taxes alone are substantial. We've occasionally allowed some friends to use it, just to help offset. How much? I asked. Rachel, this really isn't the time or place my mom started. How much have you been charging to rent out my house? My brother Jason was staring down at his plate like he wished he could disappear. His girlfriend looked like she wanted to do the same. The cousins had gone silent. Everyone was watching this play out like a car crash. Uncle Frank puffed up a little. Now listen, young lady. We've been taking care of that property out of the goodness of our hearts. Your grandmother's estate had debts. Medical bills from her last year. We've been covering those. Grandma had Medicare and supplemental insurance, I said flatly. She talked about it all the time. She was proud that she'd planned ahead so she wouldn't be a burden. What medical bills? The silence stretched. I want to see the will, I said. We can arrange that, my mom said quickly. After the party, we can all sit down and… No, I want to see it now. I pulled out my phone. I'm calling Grandma's lawyer, Mr. Peterson. He's still practicing, right? Rachel, please, my mom's voice cracked. Don't ruin my birthday over this. That stopped me. I looked at her, really looked at her. She was gripping her napkin so hard her knuckles were white. My dad had his hand on her shoulder, but he wasn't looking at either of us. He was staring at his plate. Mom, I said quietly, did you know? She didn't answer. Did you know Grandma wanted me to have the lake house? Her eyes filled with tears. It's complicated. Something cold settled in my chest. How is it complicated? Aunt Linda stood up again. Your mother and I had to make difficult decisions about the estate. Your grandmother's wishes weren't always practical. You were 25 years old, still in medical school, drowning in student debt. What were you going to do with a property that costs thousands a year in taxes and maintenance? We decided it was better to manage it for you until you were in a more stable position. Manage it, I repeated. Is that what you call renting it out and keeping all the money? We've been covering costs. How much have you made renting it out? No answer. I looked at my mother again. Mom, please. How much? She wouldn't meet my eyes. My dad finally spoke up, his voice rough. Linda, just tell her. My aunt's expression hardened. We've been renting it seasonally for the past 2 summers, and occasionally on weekends. The income has been modest. How much total? I pressed. Maybe $40,000 a year, Uncle Frank said, like it was nothing. I did the math in my head. 2.5 years of rentals, approximately $100,000, money that should have been mine. Money that could have paid down my student loans. Money I could have been using instead of working double shifts and eating ramen 4 nights a week. And you were going to sell it? I said slowly. For almost $400,000, without telling me. We were going to give you a portion, Aunt Linda started. A portion, I laughed, and it sounded slightly hysterical even to my own ears, of what's legally mine. Actually, Uncle Frank said, and his voice had gotten harder now too. Legally, the house is part of the estate. Your grandmother's will specified that Linda and your mother would manage the property. I want to see that will, I said again. Fine. Aunt Linda reached for her purse. I have a copy right here, as a matter of fact. We brought it because we thought you might want to sign some paperwork agreeing to the sale. She pulled out a folder and slapped it down on the table in front of me. I opened it with shaking hands. The will was dated 6 months before my grandmother died. I started reading through the legal language, trying to make sense of it through my exhaustion and anger. My grandmother's assets were listed. Her savings account, split equally between my mother and Aunt Linda. Her car, left to my uncle. Some jewelry designated for me and my female cousins. And then the lake house. I read that section 3 times. The property located at 847 Lakeshore Drive, it read, shall be held in trust for Rachel Marie Morrison, to be managed by co-trustees Linda Ann Foster and Margaret Susan Morrison until such time as Rachel Marie Morrison reaches the age of 30, at which point full ownership shall transfer to her with no encumbrances. I looked up. Everyone was watching me. I'm 28, I said quietly. Aunt Linda shifted in her seat. Yes, which is why we wanted to discuss the sale with you. This says you're managing it in trust. For me. That means the rental income should have been going into a trust account. For me. Well, like Frank said, there were expenses. And this says it transfers to me at 30. That's in less than 2 years. You were going to sell it before then. We thought it was better to liquidate the asset now while the market is good. You don't get to make that decision, I said. My voice was shaking now. You're trustees. You're supposed to be managing it for me, not for yourselves. My mother was crying silently now. My dad had his arm around her, but he was looking at me with something that might have been pride or might have been grief. I couldn't tell. Show me the trust account, I said to my aunt. If you've been managing this properly, there should be a separate account with all the rental income, minus legitimate expenses. Show me that account right now. The look on my aunt's face told me everything I needed to know. There is no account, is there? I said. You've been depositing the money into your personal account, using it for yourselves. We had expenses, Uncle Frank started again. Show me receipts, I interrupted. Property tax bills, maintenance records, insurance payments. If you've really been using that money for the house, you'll have documentation. Aunt Linda's face had gone from pink to red. I don't appreciate being interrogated like some kind of criminal. Then show me the receipts. Rachel, please, my mom sobbed. Can we just deal with this at home? I stood up. My chair scraped loudly against the floor. Everyone in the restaurant was probably staring at us now, but I didn't care. I'm going to ask you one more time, I said, looking directly at my aunt. Where is the money from renting my house? She lifted her chin. We used it for family expenses. Your mother needed help with some medical bills last year. Your grandmother's funeral costs were more than expected. We've been managing this property for 3 years and it's been nothing but stress and work. You've been stealing from me, I said flatly. How dare you? That's what this is. Theft. You're trustees. You have a fiduciary duty. You took money that was supposed to be held for me and used it for yourselves. Uncle Frank stood up too, his face purple now. Now you listen here, little girl. I'm calling Mr. Peterson, I said, and I actually did it this time. Pulled up his office number on my phone and hit dial. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. Rachel, stop, my mother pleaded. Please don't do this. Not here. Not now. The phone was ringing. Peterson and Associates. A receptionist's voice answered. This is Rachel Morrison. I need to speak to Mr. Peterson about my grandmother Elizabeth Morrison's estate. It's urgent. Mr. Peterson is out of the office today, but I can have him call you first thing Monday morning. Tell him it's regarding a breach of fiduciary duty by the trustees. Tell him I'm with the trustees right now, and they're attempting to sell estate property without authorization. There was a pause. I'll try to reach him on his cell phone. Can you hold? Yes. The table was dead silent now. Even the conversations at nearby tables seemed to have stopped. Or maybe I just couldn't hear anything over the pounding of my heart. My aunt sat back down slowly. You're making a huge mistake, she said quietly. We're family. Family doesn't steal from each other, I said. We didn't steal. Where's the trust account, Linda? She didn't answer. The phone clicked. Rachel? Mr. Peterson's voice was warm but concerned. Sarah said something about the lake house? Mr. Peterson, I'm at a family dinner and I just found out my aunt and my mother have been renting out the lake house that's being held in trust for me. They've allegedly collected around $100,000 in rental income over the past 2.5 years. They won't show me a trust account. They're now trying to sell the property, 18 months before it's supposed to transfer to me. I'm looking at what they say is my grandmother's will, and I need you to confirm if this is legitimate. I'm on my way, he said immediately. What restaurant? I told him. He said he'd be there in 20 minutes. When I hung up, my aunt looked like she wanted to flip the table over. My uncle was still standing, his hands clenched into fists. My mother was sobbing into her napkin. My dad was staring at me with an expression I couldn't read. Jason finally spoke up. Rachel, maybe we should all just take a breath here. Did you know? I asked him. He hesitated too long. Oh my God, I said. You all knew. It wasn't like that, he said quickly. Mom mentioned they were managing the house for you, and I thought. You thought what? That it was fine for them to steal from me? Nobody was stealing, he protested weakly. I laughed again, that same hysterical sound. They took $100,000 that was supposed to be held in trust for me and spent it on themselves. What would you call that? No one answered. The next 20 minutes were the longest of my life. We all just sat there. Nobody ate. Nobody talked. A few of the cousins quietly excused themselves and left. My mom eventually stopped crying and just sat there, staring at her hands. My aunt and uncle whispered to each other occasionally, shooting me angry looks. I stood by the entrance, waiting. A few times, staff members asked if everything was okay. I said yes. I don't think anyone believed me. When Mr. Peterson arrived, he was wearing weekend clothes and looked like he'd been interrupted in the middle of yard work. He was in his mid-60s, gray-haired, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He'd been my grandmother's lawyer for 30 years. Rachel, he said, giving me a quick hug. Show me what you have. I handed him the will. He read through it quickly, his expression growing darker with each page. Then he looked at me. This is a forgery, he said. The bottom dropped out of my stomach. What? Your grandmother's actual will is on file with my office and with the county. This document has been altered. The section about the lake house is completely different. My aunt went white. Mr. Peterson kept reading. According to the actual will, the lake house was to be transferred to you immediately upon your grandmother's death, not held in trust until you're 30, just given to you outright. You should have received the deed 3 years ago. The restaurant seemed to be spinning. That's impossible, my mother whispered. Mr. Peterson looked at her with something like pity. Margaret, I explained this to you and Linda 3 years ago when we went through the estate. Elizabeth was very clear. Rachel got the house. You and Linda got the savings accounts and some personal property. There was no trust, no management period. Rachel should have been the legal owner since 2022. But Linda said my mom started. Linda lied, I said flatly. My aunt stood up so fast her chair fell over backward. I did not. You forged a will, Mr. Peterson said quietly. That's a felony. This is ridiculous, Uncle Frank blustered. We would never. I have the original will in my office safe, Mr. Peterson continued. I also have emails from 3 years ago where I repeatedly asked Rachel to come in and sign the deed transfer paperwork. Emails that went unanswered because they were sent to an email address that Linda provided, which I'm now guessing wasn't Rachel's actual email. I pulled out my phone and showed him my email address. It was different from whatever they'd been using. Mr. Peterson nodded. I thought so. I tried calling as well, but the phone number I was given went to voicemail and was never returned. That's my old number from college, I said, feeling sick. I changed it 4 years ago. I gave Mom and Aunt Linda my new number. But not me, Mr. Peterson said gently, because you trusted them to handle the communication. My mother made a sound like a wounded animal. So what happens now? I asked. Mr. Peterson pulled out his phone. Now I call the police. Forgery, fraud, theft by conversion. These are serious crimes. Wait, my aunt said desperately. Wait. We can fix this. We'll give her the house. We'll call off the sale. We'll make this right. And the $100,000 in rental income? I asked. She went silent. Linda, my mother said, her voice broken. Tell me you kept that money separate. Tell me you have it. My aunt wouldn't look at her. Oh my God, my mom whispered. You spent it. You spent all of it. We had expenses, my aunt exploded. Do you know how much Frank's medical procedures cost last year? How much we've been paying for our daughter's rehab? We needed that money. And it's not like Rachel was suffering. She has her doctor's salary. I'm a resident, I said quietly. I make $55,000 a year. And I have $200,000 in student loan debt. That rental income would have changed my entire life. Aunt Linda's expression shifted to something ugly. Well, maybe if you'd chosen a more practical career instead of playing hero at the hospital, you wouldn't be in debt. The slap came from my mother. I'd never seen her hit anyone in my life, but her palm connected with Linda's cheek with a sharp crack that echoed through the restaurant. You forged my mother's will, Mom said, her voice shaking with rage. You lied to my daughter. You stole from her. For 3 years. And you have the audacity to blame her? Linda held her cheek, tears streaming down her face. Maggie, I'm your sister. You made me an accomplice to stealing from my own child, my mother said. I trusted you. You showed me that fake will, and I believed you. I helped you keep Rachel away from the lawyer. I gave you her new phone number and told you not to give it to Peterson because I thought we were protecting her from estate stress while she was in medical school. She turned to me, her face crumpling. Baby, I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know the will was fake. I thought we really were just managing it for you until you were ready. I wanted to believe her, but I was so tired, so angry, so betrayed. You never showed me the will, I said. In 3 years, you never once let me see it myself. Because Linda said it was better to wait until everything was settled, she broke off, realization dawning on her face. Oh God, she played me too. Mr. Peterson already had his phone to his ear, talking to someone, probably 911. My uncle grabbed my aunt's arm, trying to pull her toward the exit, but Mr. Peterson called out, I wouldn't recommend leaving. That would look very bad in court. They froze. 10 minutes later, 2 police officers arrived. Mr. Peterson explained the situation concisely. My aunt and uncle were arrested right there in the restaurant, in front of everyone. Uncle Frank kept yelling about calling their lawyer. Aunt Linda was crying, begging my mother to tell them she didn't know, that it was all a misunderstanding. My mother just turned away. The police took them out in handcuffs. The other diners were definitely staring now, some recording on their phones. My mother's 60th birthday party, now a viral video somewhere. After they left, Mr. Peterson sat down with me and went through everything. The real will, the deed that should have been transferred, the next steps. He'd already started paperwork to void the house sale and begin the process of calculating damages for the rental income theft. They won't be able to pay it back, I said quietly. Will they? Probably not all of it, he admitted. But the court can order wage garnishment, asset seizure. You'll get something. And they'll face criminal charges. I nodded. I felt numb. My mother hadn't moved from her seat. She was staring at the birthday cake the waitress had brought out earlier, candles still waiting to be lit. No one had sung. No one was going to. I'm sorry, she whispered. Rachel, I'm so sorry. I didn't know what to say to her. Part of me wanted to comfort her. She'd been manipulated too. But another part of me kept thinking about all the times over the past 3 years when I'd mentioned being stressed about money, about my loans, about working extra shifts, and she'd never once said, by the way, you own a valuable piece of property. I need some time, I said finally. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I understand. My dad drove her home. Jason and his girlfriend left quietly. I stayed with Mr. Peterson while he made more calls, started more paperwork. By the time I left the restaurant, it was dark outside. I sat in my car in the parking lot and just breathed. My phone kept buzzing with texts from various family members who'd heard what happened. I turned it off. That was 4 months ago. The criminal trial is still ongoing. My aunt and uncle pled not guilty, claiming they had permission to manage the property however they saw fit. The prosecutor has the forged will, the real will, email evidence of the fake contact information, and bank records showing they deposited rental income into their personal account. Their lawyer is trying to negotiate a plea deal. I got the lake house. The deed is in my name now. The sale was voided. I drove up there last month for the first time since my grandmother's funeral. It looked the same. The same weathered dock, the same blue shutters, the same wind chimes on the porch that she loved. But it felt different, tainted somehow. I couldn't stop thinking about all the strangers who'd rented it, slept in the beds, used the kitchen where Grandma and I used to make pancakes. I sat on the dock for hours, trying to figure out what to do. Keep it? Sell it myself? I couldn't afford the property taxes and maintenance on my residence salary, not with my loan payments. The rental income might help, but the thought of renting it out felt like becoming the same people who'd stolen from me. My mother and I are slowly talking again. She's in therapy now, trying to process the guilt of what happened. She's testified against her sister, which is destroying her, but she's doing it anyway. She says it's the least she can do. My dad says he's proud of me for standing up for myself. Jason apologized, said he should have questioned things more. Some of my cousins have taken sides. Half the family isn't speaking to the other half. The money situation is complicated. The court ordered my aunt and uncle to repay the rental income plus interest, but they've declared bankruptcy. I'll probably get maybe 20 cents on the dollar, if that. The criminal trial might result in restitution orders, but their lawyer is already arguing they don't have the means to pay. Mr. Peterson says I did everything right. That sometimes standing up for yourself means watching relationships burn. That justice isn't always clean or complete. I think about that a lot during my overnight shifts at the hospital, about how my grandmother tried to give me something valuable, and my own family turned it into a weapon. About how I ruined my mother's birthday and possibly destroyed what was left of our extended family. About whether it was worth it. Most days, I think it was. Because the alternative was letting them sell the house, take the money, and never know that I'd been robbed for 3 years. The alternative was being complicit in my own exploitation. But some nights, when I'm alone in my tiny apartment, eating leftover hospital cafeteria food, I wonder what my grandmother would think. She loved that lake house. She also loved her daughters. She wanted to give me a gift, a place that was mine. Instead, she gave me a family civil war. I'm planning to sell the lake house. I can't keep it, can't afford it, and can't make new memories there that aren't tainted by what happened. The market is still good. I'll pay off a chunk of my student loans and maybe have enough left over to finally buy furniture that isn't from Craigslist. My grandmother used to say that sometimes loving someone means giving them what they need, not what they want. I needed to know the truth. I needed to stand up for myself. I needed to learn that family isn't a free pass to exploitation. But God, I wish the lesson hadn't cost so much. The lake house goes on the market next month. I've already accepted that whatever money I get from it will be less than it should have been. My aunt and uncle stole 3 years of rental income that's probably gone forever. The legal fees are eating into what's left. And the family relationships that were destroyed? Those can't be calculated in dollars. But I own it now. It's mine. And when I sell it, it'll be my decision. Not my aunt's scheme, not my uncle's retirement fund. Mine. Sometimes justice is incomplete. Sometimes standing up for yourself means losing things you thought you'd always have. Sometimes the right choice is still the hardest choice. I'm learning to be okay with that.